During last week's Affordability Committee meeting, residents expressed strong concerns about the proposed two 45-story towers on Bradford Street near downtown Barrie. They spoke against the project at City Hall, citing issues such as excessive height and density, insufficient parking, potential traffic congestion, and negative impacts on property values and privacy. Many felt the scale of the project was not compatible with the existing neighborhood and questioned its overall sustainability.
I own two properties on Sanford Street, 43 and 45. And that's directly behind this proposed two 45-story towers. I am not pleased, to say the least. And I think the required recommended things by the city and the proposed, there's just such a vast difference to begin with, just that alone. But where is the garbage going to be? Where is the parking? It's so narrow on Sanford Street with the snow load in the winter, just for me to get out of my own driveway. I'm not for this at all. It will shade my complete property. So they can take that proposal and bring it somewhere else. I moved from Toronto. I lived right by the St. Lawrence Market. When that St. Lawrence Market parking lot was taken over with condo, co-op building, and city home, that's when I left.
Resident opposition to the big housing project has been termed one of the biggest roadblocks to increasing the housing supply in Barrie. The provincial and federal governments are providing millions of dollars in funding with a condition to support high-density developments to ease the housing crisis. There were two more presentations during the meeting. One for 242 Edgehill Drive in Ward 5, which is a residential development consisting of 3 townhouse units with attached garages, and another in McKay Road West in Ward 7. The developer is asking for a zoning bylaw amendment to create areas for stormwater management to facilitate the development of 20 additional single detached residential units. Following is the video of the meeting. You can use the timestamps in the video description to jump to the relevant section of the video.
Welcome. I will now call the Affordability Committee meeting to order. This meeting is being held in person and electronically in accordance with the Municipal Act. The 3 public meetings are being held this evening. If you're joining the meeting virtually and have not yet registered and wish to speak, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca. Staff will email you the information to participate virtually. The first public meeting is to review the zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by 10004938081 Ontario Inc. to permit a residential development. The subject lands are municipally known as 242 Edgehill Drive, Barrie. The second public meeting is to review the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Crown Development Inc. to permit a residential development. The subject lands are municipally known as 126, 136, and 140 Bradford Street. The third public meeting is to review the applications for a zoning bylaw amendment and red line revision to a draft plan of subdivision submitted by Mattamy Salem Limited for the lands known municipally as 124, 180, and 228 McKay Road, Barrie. Members of committee will be listening to the presentations and comments received during the public meetings, but will not be making comments or debating the items tonight. Committee members will have an opportunity to provide comments when the staff reports are considered by general committee at a later date. Interested persons wishing notifications of the staff reports can sign the notification form at the back of the council chambers or by email at cityclerks@barrie.ca. Michelle Banfield, Executive Director of Development Services, would you please confirm that the notifications were conducted in accordance with the Planning Act for tonight's public meeting?
Yes, Chair Nixon, it was.
Okay. Thank you. I will now call upon Greg Barker, Innovative Planning Solutions, to provide the presentation concerning the zoning bylaw amendment application, 242 Edgehill Drive, Barrie. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair Nixon. Wait for the presentation to get loaded up. Great, thank you. Good evening. My name is Greg Barker. I'm a partner with Innovative Planning Solutions here representing our client for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment application at 242 Edgehill Drive, located in Ward 5. We do have a brief presentation to give, following which I'd be happy to answer any questions that committee may have. Good. The property is shown here, outlined in red, known as 242 Edgehill Drive. It has an area of approximately 730 square meters, along with 23 meters of frontage along Edgehill Drive. The property, it is currently vacant, however, historically contained a derelict single detached dwelling. That dwelling was demolished in early 2023. And as you can see by the image, limited vegetation exists on the property. The surrounding area, it includes a range of dwelling types, including single detached dwellings and townhomes, as well as higher density built forms to both the east and the west. You can see the City Barrie Operations Center is directly to the south, and the Barrie landfill is located to the north west, which is sort of the top left corner. The lands are within an existing neighborhood with existing amenities such as parks, walking trails, commercial and industrial or employment uses, as well as public transit, which runs along Edgehill Drive. Edgehill Drive is classified as a minor collector in your official plan. Access to Highway 400 is also within 1.5 kilometers at the Dunlop intersection. The lands are identified here by the red icon. They are designated as neighborhood area. That is the yellow layer you see on the image on the left. And they are also located within the city's built boundary. Under the official plan, all residential uses are permitted within the neighborhood area, including the proposed townhouses. And I'd also just draw your attention quickly to the teal and black dashed line that represents the waste disposal assessment area associated with the landfill. And as you'll note, it's the property is located just beyond that area. Very briefly, this slide provides a general overview of the official plan policies and notes that neighborhoods within the built-up area are generally considered areas where low impact intensification will occur. The plan requires the built-up area to accommodate appropriate levels of redevelopment and intensification, as intensification represents an essential element and component of the official plan to the 2051 planning horizon. And further, the official plan does permit developments of up to 4 stories in neighborhood areas subject to criteria, whereas the development proposes 3 stories. The lands are currently zoned as residential 2 or R2 in the current zoning bylaw. The proposal before you is requesting the lands be rezoned to the residential multiple dwelling second density townhouse or RM2 TH zone with special provisions relating to an increase in permitted gross floor area of 82% where 60% is permitted. And so as you can also see in this figure by the various colors, there's a range of various residential types and densities in the area, including multiple built forms. And then the purple indicates the City Barrie's operations center to the north, to the south. I'd also like to advise committee of the application relative to the draft proposed new zoning bylaw, which is underway by staff. At this time, and based on the most recent draft number 2, the proposed development would be permitted as of right. The draft bylaw places the lands within the NL2 or neighborhood low 2 zone, which permits 3-story townhouses as proposed, and further would not require special provisions relating to gross floor area as currently proposed. However, this bylaw is only in draft form. It's not in effect. And so we are before you this evening requesting an amendment to your current bylaw to permit the proposed development. This slide here, this illustrates the conceptual development plan for the site, including the three-story townhouse units as seen in this figure over units A, B, and C. Each lot will have more than 200 square meters of area with up to 3 parking spaces and generously sized rear, side, and front yards. The units themselves will be approximately 1,700 square feet, 2 to 3 bedrooms, 2 to 3 bedroom options. It's our opinion that this development, it will contribute to the range and mix of housing options in the area through modest intensification. And should this application be approved, further applications will be required to facilitate the proposed lot creation for units or lots A, B, and C. Very briefly, through pre-consultation with staff, a number of studies have been required. Those studies are listed here. These studies are also available for any members of committee or the public should they wish to review. And very briefly to summarize, this proposed zoning application aims to rezone 242 Edgehill Drive from the R2 to the RM2 TH zone with special provisions. The special provisions again relate to a proposed increase in gross floor area. And this will facilitate the development of 3 townhouse units. This will increase the housing stock. It'll provide more housing options for residents and allow for a more attainable housing product to be constructed. The new units are considered to be complementary and compatible with the existing neighborhood and provides the necessary functional elements, including parking spaces and amenity areas. This proposal, in our opinion and through our review, is aligned with and conforms to or consistent with applicable planning policy and in my opinion, represents good planning. So with that, Chair Nixon, that concludes my presentation. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now call upon Rachel Mulholland, planner from the Development Services Department, to provide an update on the status of the application.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, Chair Nixon and members of the Affordability Committee. In addition to the presentation by the applicant's planning consultant, Mr. Greg Barker of Innovative Planning Solutions, a memorandum was provided to committee to describe the application. Please note that planning staff are currently completing the technical review process associated with said application. A neighborhood meeting was held virtually on March 21st, 2023, with 15 participants, including the ward councillor, deputy mayor attending, where feedback was provided related to the following: increased density impacts on surrounding lots with single detached dwellings, effects on property value, impacts of the proposed height on neighboring properties, and increased demand for on-street parking. Staff are currently reviewing the application for the following: compliance with the provincial planning policy and the city's official plan, justification and the appropriateness of the proposed amendment and the requested site-specific provisions, efficient use of land and resources that optimize the use of existing services and infrastructure, integration of the proposed development in the surrounding residential area, including the preservation of private and shared boundary vegetation, impacts that the development may have on traffic operations in the area, and compliance with city standards. A detailed analysis of these considerations and site-specific zoning provisions will be provided when a staff report is brought forward for general committee's consideration. Staff will continue to work with the applicant to address feedback received through the public consultation process, as well as comments raised through the analysis of these applications by technical staff and our agency partners. A staff report providing a recommendation to general committee on the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is anticipated to be brought forward in the third quarter of 2024. If approved, a subsequent application for consent or part lot control will be required to separately convey each lot. The submission materials and key dates associated with the applications, along with my contact information, are available for viewing online at the city's proposed developments webpage under Ward 5. Thank you, Chair Nixon. Members of Affordability Committee and the public. If you have any questions, I would be happy to address them now or following comments from the public.
Thank you very much. I don't believe we have any members of the public have pre-registered to speak in person. I don't believe. Thank you. And also, is anyone virtually registered? Nope. Okay. I'm going to ask Ward 5 Deputy Mayor Thompson and Ward 5 Councilor, do you have any questions or clarification?
Thank you, Chair Nixon. I do not have any.
Oh, okay. Any other members of committee have comments, questions, or clarification? Seeing none, thank you. We will move on. If anyone has any further written comments, you could submit them to Rachel Mulholland in the Development Services Department at Rachel, RACHEL Mulholland, that is MUHOLLAND at barrie.ca. We will move to our second public meeting. I am now going to call upon Kevin Bouchard of Innovative Planning Solutions, Inc. to provide the presentation concerning the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application regarding 126, 136, and 140 Bradford Street, Barrie. Go ahead, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Affordability Committee. My name is Kevin Bouchard. I am a senior associate with IPS Consulting here in Barrie. And this evening I have the pleasure of representing Crown Bradford Development, Inc. in their proposal to bring forward a really quite a spectacular development. It's 245 story residential towers fronting on Bradford Street. It's a mixed-use development proposal. So let me carry on with the presentation. I should be under 10 minutes. I appreciate your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, if that's it. So figure out your apparatus. Here we go. So in terms of the site context, the property itself is identified in red on this slide. It has a total frontage of about 90 meters on Bradford Street. Currently, the uses consist of commercial uses on the property, and obviously they're going to be displaced. Bradford Street consists largely of commercial uses. When we look to the west, which is the left side, and the east, which is the right side, you're finding that you have residential uses in these areas, both east and west. In terms of a neighborhood context, this is a neighborhood which is very much in transition, as I'm sure council is aware. There have been prior approved developments relating to intensification of a similar ilk, 25 to 45 stories at 51 to 75 Bradford Street, and two towers up to 29 stories at 34 and 40 Bradford Street. So by transition, I'm meaning the new official plan has brought in a density intensification in transit supported development along Bradford Street. So this is a corridor that is expected to change over time. The in-force official plan identifies the property, again shown in red on this plan and in the dark brown color, as having a high density residential designation. It's in the urban growth center designation in terms of community structure. You'll see immediately to the west, you have the medium density lighter brown designation. And to the west of that, you have a neighborhood area or yellow designation. So what's happening is that you're having a transition of density and land use as you move from in a westerly direction. In an easterly direction, obviously we're heading towards the lake. It is a high density designation towards the lake. It is approximately 360 meters from this property to the lakeshore edge. On the right side of this slide, we're showing community structure, and you'll hear me talk about an intensification corridor. Obviously, Bradford Street as an arterial is an intensification corridor, and this is part of the policy framework and alignment that's leading to a higher densities and transit-supported development in this portion of the city of Barrie. The other notation, and it's over on the right-hand side, you have the Allendale GO station. The Allendale GO station is about 760 meters away, so it's considered a walkable distance. The current zoning bylaw the lands are identified as general commercial, C4. So there will be a zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate this development. And this is something that I'm sure the council has seen many times before, the need to look at modifications to the zoning bylaw to facilitate higher densities of this ilk. In the new zoning bylaw, draft zoning bylaw, we have an urban core designation that is contemplating higher densities, but it's a question of getting there. So in the meantime, the zoning bylaw will be about positioning this, the zoning on the property to be consistent and aligned with the official plan designation that is already on the property. The proposed site plan, I wish I could blow it up a little bit here, but just there are two 45-story residential towers sitting and including a 6-story parking podium. I'm sorry that I might have, it's you, Carl, not me. Okay, if we can clean up the slide, that would be great if we can reload that. But again, I'll just go back to my notes and move forward. So the 45-story residential, 6-story parking podiums, there are 912 residential units. There are 1-story and 2-story residential units. We are proposing 15% of the units as affordable units. That total number is 136 units. And by affordable, we're talking about a 60% quantum in terms of the affordability number. We're proposing 670 almost square meters of retail space, 346 parking spaces, of which I think 46 are inclusive I'm sorry, 43 are barrier-free parking spaces. 4 spaces are street level fronting parking spaces at grade. There is amenity open space proposed in the podium area between the two towers, and as well, the 7th floor is committed to indoor amenity space. This slide is giving an illustration of the proposed built form, and it's characteristic in the waterfront development in this community and other communities to have lower densities at the lakefront and build them up as you move inward. And this is a pattern that you're seeing already established in Barrie, and our proposal is a continuation of the pattern of development that's already being identified or committed to through development approvals in the area. So in terms of urban design, a couple of key points that we want to point out is that the podium level, the 6-story podium level, provides an active streetscape at grade and providing retail spaces onto Bradford Street. We're making efficient use of land by providing outdoor amenity space and residents on the 7th floor, residents on the 7th floor above the podium and between the two towers. The towers themselves have been separated from the adjacent property lines. So each of the side yards at 12.5 meters. Combined between the towers, there's a 25-meter separation distance, which is a consistent urban design standard. A question in some of the comments that have been received through the city from residents is about shadows. This site will meet the 45-degree angular plane extending to the low density residential area to the west. So that's meeting a recognized and applicable development standard for shadows in the area. Obviously, a higher density of buildings such as this is going to create some shadowing effect, but the pattern here in the approach here is meant to recognize the angular plane and respect the impact on the single-family residential buildings. I've mentioned earlier in my presentation that the building height is similar to approved developments in this area along the Bradford Street corridor, so we're not breaking new ground. And I've mentioned as well the podium contributes to boards pedestrian-oriented streetscape activities. The architectural design has been provided by Kierkegaard Architects, and in that sense, it's a very well-respected and accomplished firm. They've been influenced by the natural features of Lake Simcoe, building a wave motif into the podium that provides interest and architectural variation to the building design. Getting to the proposed amendments, I mentioned earlier that the zoning is general commercial zone in the existing zoning bylaw. There are a number of amendments, and I can go into them in detail, but to save time. But simply to say that the specific provisions are to recognize the intensification and the density that's proposed in the higher density use, which isn't otherwise identified as a matter of right in the existing zoning designation. There is one official plan modification. A lot of care has been taken in this development to comply with urban design standards as we have understood them, and they are appropriate. And that is to amend section 2.3.2 of the Urban Growth Center policy, providing for an overall target of 20% affordable housing. Earlier in my presentation, I mentioned we are targeting 15% affordable housing, and that's at the 60th percentile. And that number comes from another section in the official plan, section 6.4.3, requiring a 15% affordable housing for official plan amendments for medium to high density housing. And this distinction we're making between the two numbers is certainly the Urban Growth Center has an objective of 20% affordable housing, but 15% of that is clearly targeted toward site-specific developments for medium and high density. But we're recognizing this variance, I guess, or incongruity in these policies and looking for relief from the 20% provision. The studies that have been undertaken, as you can appreciate, are fairly far-reaching, and they are available to the public. So planning justification, affordable housing, urban design, shadow impact. I've spoken to a number of these already. I want to highlight the financial servicing report or functional servicing report, and just to identify that we are able to service this development in terms of sanitary, water, and storm with existing services on Bradford Street, and the stormwater will be handled through a single tank on the site. So there are no real constraints to bringing this land for development in terms of servicing and commitment. So in summary, this development is going to provide development, the development of additional housing stock to the city of Barrie. And of course, that is certainly in line with the objectives of the province and the city as they've been identified. This is part of an effort to encourage the more efficient use of land, higher density development, and reduce urban sprawl. Certainly some of those comments were raised in the letters that we received, the comments we received from residents in the area, recognizing that as an effort. There's a real effort by our clients to provide for attainable housing, to understand how it can be delivered, and in delivering 136 units to that end. So I think we're trying to be on target with the priorities of the province and the city of Barrie as well. As I mentioned just a moment ago, we're utilizing existing infrastructure. So it's a very efficient type of development for the community, and it's transit supportive with access, walking access to the GO station. The size and scale of development is consistent with the pattern of approvals and that have been secured or provided in this area. So we're comfortable in that approach. The official plan amendment, as I said, and zoning bylaw amendment is going to yield 2 45-story residential towers and mixed-use development, podium for parking, 469 square meters of GFA retail, 912 residential units, and 364 parking spaces. These are my comments. Thank you very much for your attention. if there are any questions, I'm quite pleased to do my best to answer them or seek out the answers if I'm not able to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Bouchard. I will now call upon Logan Jeffermans, planner from the Development Services Department, to provide an update on the status of the applications.
Good evening, Chair Nixon and members of the Affordability Committee and others. So further to Mr. Bouchard's presentation, and I understand there may be questions afterwards for both of us or one of us. But just to note that staff are continuing to review the official plan amendment application and zoning bylaw amendment applications. The neighborhood meeting for this application was held October 23rd, 2023, with 34 residents and the Ward 2 councillor in attendance. At that time, we heard feedback that has been shared, I think, in some of the packages available to yourselves today. Questions and comments around height and density, the visual impact and shadow and wind impacts upon surrounding residential areas, whether they transition now or into the future, as well impacts upon traffic and parking in the immediate community, and additionally, capacity of school boards to accommodate any of those new residents that come to this space. Staff are reviewing those comments, as well as the application for appropriateness in the context of compliance with the provincial policies, the city's current official plan, in addition to the appropriateness of the proposed intensification given surrounding development, residents, and the intentions for the Bradford Street corridor. We're also looking at suitability of affordable standards and the required parking within this urban growth center location, consideration of infrastructure capacity and timing for this development, and ensuring that the redevelopment complies with all other city standards. A detailed review of this consideration, the official plan amendment and site-specific zoning provisions will be provided within that staff report. So as far as next steps go, staff will continue to work with the applicant to address the feedback received from today's public meeting, as well as previous neighborhood meetings, working to analyze that with technical staff and agency partners. These items through that discussion may require revisions or updates to plans and reports submitted in support of this application, and a staff report providing recommendation to the general committee on the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments is anticipated to be brought forward likely in early 2025. A concurrent site plan application will be considered at that time, however, would not require staff recommendation to council. It is anticipated that a majority of detailed design and technical matters that may arise in some of these discussions at this time would be addressed through that future site plan control process. Prior to concluding, I'd just like to remind Affordability Committee and members of the public in attendance today that all submission materials and key dates associated with this subject applications are available online for viewing on the city's development webpage under Ward 2. You can search for 126, 136, 140 Bradford Street, or alternatively, you may always contact me. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand we have 3 pre-registered speakers. I'll begin by, I'd like to now call upon Daisy Oliveros to please approach the podium and begin by stating your first and last name and address for the record. Welcome, Daisy.
Hi, my first name is Daisy. My last name is Oliveros. I live at 55 Sanford Street here in Barrie. Pardon me, just let me find what I wrote. I wrote a bunch of stuff and then I thought about what I was writing and I revised it. Good evening and thanks for letting me speak. So I read through the developer's proposal and I have a question, a suggestion, and a request that I would like to communicate to you tonight. So first, here's a quote from the proposal. I believe it was page 8 of the proposal online, says residential in the form of single detached dwellings are located directly west. Although these lands have been designated medium density in the new City of Barrie official plan and are expected to be developed with higher density built forms in the future. So this is mentioned a few times in this proposal, that at some point in the future, our neighborhood is going to be redeveloped or it's intended to be redeveloped. And I'm sorry if this is vague, but I'm just wondering if at all possible, if anyone here can clarify what kind of timeline to expect. My neighbors and I, we put time and money into updating our homes and gardens. Should we hold off on that? So that's my first part of what I have to say. You can answer it later if you can answer it. Second, I strongly recommend that the developer provide parking for more units, because the idea of people just relying on cycling and transit, it's I don't mean to be dismissive about this. It's just not realistic. And I'm speaking from experience. I lived without a car for over 8 years and I biked everywhere. And unless this developer intends to cater only to people who are like fitness enthusiasts, this ideology is going to collide with reality at some point. And you might want to just provide the parking rather than try to sort this out after the fact. So you should consider how essential personal vehicles are and where to put them. Thirdly, this developer is asking for increased height and a rear yard setback of 3 meters. Now, I just want to say, sorry, I just wanted to say, I'm actually in favor of this. You know, some of my neighbors might not be. Are you guys done? You're good? Okay.
You go right ahead. We were just having a little side question here.
Okay, so sorry, I just lost my place there. Yeah, I'm in favor of this. I think, you know, I've heard so many stories of people living in odd places. I do believe, yes, we do need to provide more housing. It does need to be made affordable. I don't like 45 stories right on top of me in my backyard, 10 feet away from my property line. But I understand housing is a thing. We need to provide it. So I'm hoping, instead of the landscaping that is included in the proposal, that if the developer would consider providing a well-constructed fence, like 8 feet tall with no gaps, like no gaps underneath, no gaps between boards, whatever you make it from. And if, I don't want that to sound like an excessive request or suggestion, but you know, if you guys are asking for amendments to things like rear yard setback and 45 stories is quite a lot. That's a lot to have right on top of you. And if you want us to coexist peacefully with all the people that this will bring, I think a fence will go a long way towards that. Unless redevelopment is right around the corner. And if that's the case, then I guess the fence is not going to be a thing. That's all I have. That's it.
Thank you very much. And we will, I've made note of your question. I'll bring it up after the other two speakers, so we're not asking it twice. Yeah, thank you. Our next speaker, Joanne Cannon. Joanne, are you here tonight? Yes, okay, thank you. Please approach the podium and begin by stating your first and last name and address for the record. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Joanne Cannon. I own 2 properties on Sanford Street, 43 and 45. And that's directly behind this proposed 2 45-story towers. I am not pleased, to say the least. And I think the required recommended things by the city and the proposed, there's just such a vast difference to begin with, just that alone. But where is the garbage going to be? Where is the parking? It's so narrow on Sanford Street with the snow load in the winter, just for me to get out of my own driveway. I'm not for this at all. It will shade my complete property. So they can take that proposal and bring it somewhere else. I moved from Toronto. I lived right by the St. Lawrence Market. When that St. Lawrence Market parking lot was taken over with condo, co-op building, and city home, that's when I left. That's all I have to say.
Oh, okay, thank you. Mr. Doug Lougheed, please approach the podium and begin by stating your first and last name and address for the record.
Thank you, Chair Nixon, Your Worship, Mayor Nuttall, and members of council. Name is Doug Lougheed. I live at 151033 Ellen Street in Barrie. That's the Nautica condos. First of all, I'm not near the position that the previous two speakers are. I think I sympathize with them. I can tell you that. My glasses are worried, but anyways, I just want to point out a few things. First of all, this application viewed solely on thank you. This application shouldn't be viewed solely on its own merits or lack thereof. It needs to be viewed in conjunction with many others, and I'm sure it will be. And the cumulative effect in the city of Barrie and the Bradford Street Lakeshore specifically. I realize that council has to consider provincial intensification policies in deciding on this development application. And I also realize that Bradford Street is a designated growth corridor, and it will change, and there will be larger buildings on smaller footprints, and they will occur. Please remember, though, your decisions will set precedents on the future, what future proposals look like. Your decisions on this really matter, and that others with the Bradford Street corridor, and this will be the city and your council's legacy. From a more specific point of view, secondly, this is a 45-story application, and I disagree quite vigorously with the proponent in which he said that there's other 45-story buildings. Yes, there is one that I'm aware of on the properties between Nautica condos and 2 and 6 Toronto Street. But that 45-story building is sitting on a much larger footprint than this 1 acre property that we're talking about here. 45 stories, in my opinion, with two towers is simply too high for the city of Barrie. Height standard for years was 16 stories. And now we have debut condos downtown with 36, 2 towers, and now this application for 45. And so I think, I'm 100% sure that this development is not going to be cut down to 16 stories, but it needs to be significantly looked at. In terms of what one of the other speakers said, and the variances, including setback, frontage, floor area, height, etc., are way beyond minor. They're excessive. So the one previous lady was talking about a 3-meter setback. So that setback for a 45-story building is between me and Miss Cook there. That's what we're talking about, a 45-story building, which is basically 10 steps, something like that. So that's pretty close. Biggest issue I have is 912 residential units and 364 total parking spaces for residents and visitors. I'll be blunt with you. I think this is insanity in the city of Barrie. Transportation infrastructure it can't accommodate certainly today, and I'm not sure whether it'll ever accommodate it down the road. So that to believe that people are going to be in these units and not have some form of transportation, I don't think is realistic. What's going to happen is I think there's going to be 3 adverse effects. One, you're going to have a lot of residents in this building that are going to be applying for the city waterfront parking passes. And they're going to be parking their cars 2 blocks away in the city waterfront parking lots. And they're going to go and get their cars because they can't get a parking spot in the building where they build and bought. And that's going to adversely affect all the other residents of the city of Barrie who want to come enjoy this beautiful waterfront. You create a massive illegal parking problem and also significant traffic injection. The last point I want to make is kind of that, just as a comparison to where I live in Nautica. Now, I realize Nautica is a lot smaller building than this, but Nautica sits on 1.33 hectares. This property is 0.39 hectares. So this property is 1/3 the size of the current Nautica condominiums. Nautica is 16 stories, 2 towers, versus 45 stories and 2 towers, 3 times the size. What's at Nautica? Nautica has 304 residential units versus 912, so 3 times the size. Nautica has 0 square meters worth of retail space. This says 469, and I'm not suggesting that retail space isn't required, because it is. Nautica has a total of, and this is I think a very important point. Nautica has a total of 464 parking spaces for 419 are for residential uses and 45 are for visitor, versus 364 parking spaces total. 25% less than Nautica, but 300% more in terms of residential spaces, not to mention the retail space. When I look out in the parking lot that we have as a visitor parking lot each day, we probably have 5 to 8 service vans and trucks in the visitor lot. I don't know whether this is scientific math or not, but for something 3 times the size, that tells me that you're going to have between 15 and 24 or 25 service vehicles that are for the Nautica complex, whether they be renovations that people are doing and that kind of stuff. So that's what I see in our parking lot every day. Weekends, 20 to 25 vehicles parked every weekend. It's not non-scientific again. That's 60 to 75 vehicles that are going to have visitors to that building that has 912 units. Each week, or on long weekends, Christmas, Thanksgiving, that parking lot is full. That's 45 vehicles. So that's 125 vehicles. Where are you going to park all these vehicles? And that's going to be significant because there isn't any place to park them. So in conclusion, I asked City Council to look at this proposal, but I think really the size and certainly the size and scope of the development needs to be more reasonable, but absolutely hold to your line that 1 parking space per residential unit that I believe the city bylaws right now should be adhered to. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lougheed. Are there any other members of the public that wish to provide comments? Yes. On down, Mr. Rowe, please approach the podium, state your first and last name and address for the record. Thank you.
Yes, hello, I'm Ian Rowe. I live at 140 Dunlop Street East, Bayshore Landing, Unit 1603. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, your worship. I want to start my comments with an apology. I only heard about this proposal 2 days ago and I've been out of town, so I've not had an opportunity of reviewing it in any level of detail, and therefore my comments are going to have to be cursory in nature. But there are a number of comments I'd like to make. Let's start with the height. In my opinion, the city of Barrie made a mistake in enshrining 25 stories in any planning document as a standard. And even if to that degree, that 25 stories doesn't mean that every single project is appropriate for 25 stories. It should be determined on a site-by-site basis when zoning amendments are required. But to virtually double that number to 45 and to create 900 units on a 1 acre lot speaks to an overbuilding on this site, which is breathtaking. This level of density, I'm sure, is not found on any other property in the city of Barrie, proposed or built. We currently have the example downtown of the debut property, which I think is at 32 stories now, and I'm maybe getting to 36. I'm not exactly sure the total. I happen to consider that to be an abomination. And when I speak to anybody in the city of Barrie, when that building comes up, they share my view. I've been in different places in Barrie where you can't see anything about the horizon except trees, and then this monolith sticks up in the sky 10 or 15 stories above the horizon. And this building, these buildings are going to be another 25% taller than that yet. I don't think this is a vision that people in Barrie have for this city, and I'm disappointed if council or this committee shares the view that that is appropriate. Now, unfortunately, I'm not aware of the planning department ever failing to recommend a developer's application for a gross increase in the height of their proposal. And unfortunately, again, I'm not aware of council rejecting planning decisions, planning department recommendations, but I'm hoping this surely would be one where you would consider that. So that's with respect to height. And I've also touched on density at 900 units. But I have two rhetorical questions to ask tonight of the committee, and I appreciate you're not required to or intending to answer them. Number one is, how many of you came here tonight for the meeting on Barrie Transit? And secondly, how many of you don't own a car? The suggestion that it's appropriate for a project to have 2/3 of the units to have no parking available is I don't wish to indulge in hyperbole, but I suggest it's absurd in this community. We cannot compare a situation in downtown Toronto where they have a subway system and a level of service from the TTC to this site on Bradford Street, and to compare Barrie Transit with the TTC service that would be available to people in downtown Toronto. Where are these people? First of all, who is going to move into this building? Are they not intending to be many young couples, both of them working, probably both needing cars? And yet even one car per unit is only going to carry or cover 364 units out of over 900. In my submission, I guess maybe there's a politically correct war on cars, and somebody's going to suggest, well, if we don't let them have a car, they'll have to learn how to use transit. And my suggestion is that that is a very paternalistic attitude, and I do not understand how developers actually think they can sell these units, but apparently they do, because proposal after proposal is coming forward now with far less than one parking space per unit. I wish I'd had the opportunity of reviewing the application in greater detail. I'm sure there are issues I would like to raise with respect to the relief that would be claimed in this application. I'm sure it is extensive, because if they're going to shoehorn 900 units onto 1 acre of land, they're going to have a whole series of variations from the performance standards of the bylaw. But unfortunately, I've not had that opportunity. Perhaps I'll be able to submit further information to the planning department with respect to that. So those would be my submissions, and if there are any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Okay,
Seeing
thank you,
none.
Mr. Rowe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that in the audience that has any comments? Please approach the podium and begin by stating your first, last name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Probably some of you know me. My name is Nasser George Nader. I'm not nobody's friends here. The problem is here, actually, it's about the transit. I know Mr. Mayor said we can able to do something about it. And also the problem is people in a senior age, no discrimination against anybody, just saying, oh, somebody said to me, I'm waiting for this bus. And I said, yes, but you have to book an app. And they said, I don't have any phone for that. And I feel really bad, especially my 4-year-old daughter. I raise a good child. I have 3. We go on a bus and he says, good morning or whatever, but the bus drivers are rude. He says, Daddy, how come I say this? And I said, probably sometimes people have like bad days. How many times I have to email the city or anybody? I'm always nice. Mr. Nagusi knows me. Everybody else know me. I always start my stance with like mid-dear and so on. But sometimes when I get rude, I will get rude, because the problem is Every time I cannot wait 43 minutes on a bus to be on a 12B or 101. I just yesterday post something on a Facebook. I got so many flooded messages with sadness that said my teenage daughter goes to work from here to somewhere. She has to take the Uber every time because the buses doesn't conflict, which is true. The 12B doesn't even work sometimes.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I don't want to be the one, be rude and interrupt, but I have two questions for you. First of all, I neglected to ask you your name and address for the.
Oh, I already said that. So did I not say?
Yeah, I don't think we got your address.
Okay.
Okay.
I live on 215 Phillips Street, L4N3V2.
Okay, my second question is, are your remarks pertaining to what we're here to discuss, which is the development on Bradford Street, or is it a transit issue?
It's just on a transit issue. That's what I said, because I
Okay,
just came in
because
there.
this is not
I just
something
want to
on the
advocate for
agenda.
the people. That's exactly I'm here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comments, but this is strictly pertaining to three different issues, so I really can't tie up the.
And also for the development on a corner from Patterson and Phillips too. So
Okay, that will be on a different agenda.
Okay.
And you're more than welcome to register for that, and we hope to see you back.
thank you so much.
You're
Have a good
very
day.
welcome. Okay,
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
yes,
I just want to, we do have individuals who oversee transit in the room. They've heard the remarks, and I think that they can incorporate that feedback going forward and perhaps reach out as well to be able to discuss those further. You're completely right. It's not the right meeting, but it has been heard. I
Yes.
just want to make sure that that's communicated out.
okay, thank you. Oh, my mic was off. Yes, must have heard me. So come on down. Please state your name and address for the record.
Chairman Nixon, Mayor and Council, my name is Gary Bell. I live at 365 Codrington Street. And I wanted to add or supplement to some of what you've heard, because it can't be just left as a few individual voices with something so significant as this. The buildings proposed at the 45 story height. And I'm just going by the notice because I, like Ian, haven't looked at the details, but you don't need to look at the details to see how fundamentally wrong this is. It's presented in the graphics and in the table. Council, the zone anticipates an intensification of up to 600% of the site. That's taking the site 6 times the full site. That's the plan of this city for this part of Bradford Street. The proposed exception is to 1,311%, more than double. Now, you've heard some of these numbers another way, but this is about intensification. This proposal is more than double the intensity and size of building that our zoning bylaw anticipates. And as Ian said, it's in the order of triple the height. The exceptions are all done and managed. The word is to facilitate. Well, it's to permit. And if they don't get these exceptions, this building is not proposed. So in summary, Council, this proposal, 45 stories, 2 towers on a small site, it's out of place, it's out of character, it's out of compliance with the way this city has planned it and should plan it and make decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to make some comments? Do not see any, so thank you all for those that did. As the Ward 2 councillor, I have a couple of questions, comments, I guess. I'm going to start. I'm going to ask Mr. Bouchard. This is a very ambitious project, to say the least. 2 45-story buildings are, you know, they're going to be noticed, no question. We obviously need the density. But I do have my big issue, I guess, is the parking, as most residents in the neighborhood have stated tonight, as well as other comments that I've received prior. I'm sure you've done your homework, you've done your studies. The coming up with a number, and I guess when you also subtract the affordable housing units from parking, so that brings you down to just right around 0.4. Is that correct, or is it like 3.9 or 4.1?
Yeah, it's about, I have the number here. I think it's at 0.49.
Yeah. Now, the $1 million question is, and today, these days, when someone purchases, these are condominiums, I'm assuming, not rentals. So you buy the unit and then you purchase your parking spot separately. Is that correct?
Let me start in perhaps a little, if I may, through you to yourself, I suppose. Yes, it is an ambitious project, and but this isn't the first ambitious project that Barrie has seen or is likely to see. And I know there was reference through one of the deputations about the Nautica development, and in its day, that was an exceptional project. But times have changed, and the nature of projects being brought forward has changed. I was the planner who brought forward the debut project to Barrie, and that was 38 stories, 40 stories, and it had never been done before. And I think it's a very elegant and beautiful addition to the downtown, and it's reframing the skyline of this, and it set off a series of developments and opportunities that some that have been brought forward to the city, and others will come, and they'll be shaped and formed through the process, as this one will be. But it is a different development world today than it was 10 years ago, and certainly 40 years ago when I started my business. So working in this business. So let me come back to a couple of other things that have changed and that drive this development. Certainly parking is an issue.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to talk
And
about
I wanted
now.
to come back to your comment.
Yeah.
And when I look, and reference was made to the city of Toronto, where they have buildings that have 0 parking standards. And you say, well, it has a subway. I could see where that happens. However, Mississauga is much reduced. Pitcher is much reduced, etc. There are many, and Barrie has changed in its proposed bylaw of dramatic reductions in parking. Have we got the right number? We have a number that we justified through an analysis, but it will be vetted and discussed and reviewed through staff. So that's something that we're going to be dealing with. So it's the number that we think we can support, but we're not in this on, this is our proposal, and it's being tendered for review and discussion. We'll carry forward. But to go back to the day when we had 1.25, 1.5 spaces for an apartment building, that's not something that's viable in today's marketplace, and it's in today's development because of issues like affordability. So when we say that we're bringing forward affordable units and we're bringing forward 15% affordable units, that is something that's factored into the cost and design of a building that comes forward from the developer. Because in the end, if he can't provide that and have it penciled in so that it works, it doesn't get built. So we have to find where we can make those trade-offs. And if it means that somebody who buys a unit, of course they know they don't have a parking space, well, then they're going to have to rely on transit, and they're going to have to rely on perhaps Uber or other means other means. By the way, there is one bicycle spot for each unit. So there are TDM measures that are really driving this support. So there is going to be a shift. And I think that's part. Is it the number that we propose? We think that number we can make work, But this is a number that's being tendered in our documentations and will be reviewed as part of this application process. But it is all part of providing that package of affordable, attainable housing.
Yeah.
And in this community. And if we don't go down that route, we just can't pencil it in.
No, I understand. I just, I'd hate to see you go to all that trouble and build two 45-story buildings and then find out that 30% of them were empty because people wouldn't buy them because there was no parking there. That's all. So and the other thing I just wanted to, and I know we certainly can't hold you down to a date by any chance, but is this something that, should things proceed, that your client is planning to go ahead with at any specific time?
I can say unreservedly that every indication from my client is that he will proceed with the development on this site as soon as he practically can, as soon as market conditions allow.
Okay, I see. Okay. Thank you very much. That's the only question I had. Yeah, thank you. You're free to sit down. Thank you very much. I will answer Daisy had a question there about the time length of, I guess, complete redevelopment of that Rock Park area. And I can't answer that. Ms. Banfield, would you like to, other than it's something that's already started, is going to be going on for the next 20 some odd years, I don't know if we have any better timeline to offer you than that.
Through you, Chair Nixon, I would expect it would be many years before you'd see progress in terms of shovels in the ground, just in light of the nature of the approvals that lay ahead for the developer and just the actualities of building a project of this scale.
Yes, thank you. I believe you were talking about you were talking about more of the entire neighborhood transition, Daisy? Well, I can hear you. No, actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm being asked if you could come back down, but I can just answer your question, which is, this is something that is part of like a 20-30 year plan, and you heard about this specific development. So that's as much of an answer as I can give you at this point, but you're more than welcome to no, I'm sorry. No, it's kind of one per customer tonight. Yes. Or at any night. Yeah. So anyways, all right. Well, thank you. And hopefully that gave you some clarity. We will move to our third public meeting, and I am now going to call upon Ray DeHamel from Jones Consulting Group to provide the presentation concerning the zoning bylaw amendment application and redline revision to draft approval plan of subdivision 124-180 and 228 McKay Road, Barrie. I will now call upon Tyler Butler from the... Oh, no, he's not. Oh, I'm sorry. Jeez, I jumped way ahead of you. Oh, yes, you are video. I was looking ahead. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of committee, staff, and public. My name is Ray DeHamel with the Jones Consulting Group, and I'm presenting this evening on behalf of Mattamy Salem Limited, which is a subsidiary of Mattamy Homes Canada. My apologies for not being presenting to you in person. I always like to be there in person for these, but I'm out of town right now. I would just like to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see my screen, Mr. Chairman, or anybody else. Hello?
Yes.
Yep. Great.
We got you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this is property at 124, 180, and 224 McKay Road, and it relates to Mattamy Homes, a community called Vicinity West. The site is located along Veterans Drive, which is on the east of the red line here, and McKay Road, which is to the south. The overall property is about 52 hectares, members of committee, and the zoning bylaw amendment applies to only the northern piece, which I've got the title north there, which is approximately 19 hectares of land and has 250 meters of frontage on Veterans Drive. And then the zoning, so the red line plan of subdivision applies to the entire south and north piece, except for a portion of this site has already been registered and final approved. What that means is that the The services on the ground, the lots have been sold, the houses are under construction. You can give us some indication of surrounding land uses. There's a single detached dwelling to the immediate west, but this entire area to the west, outside of any of our environmental protection lands, is proposed for residential or neighborhood uses. Immediately to the north, this area here, which is County of Simcoe lands, and east of Veterans Drive are planned for employment uses, and I'll show you that slide in a few minutes. The plan is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the growth plan and the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. And there's technical studies in support of the applications that have been submitted to demonstrate same. And moving on to the official plan now. The north portion, again, the north lands, which are here, which are 19 hectares, which are subject to the zoning bylaw amendment application, have two designations. The green designation is the natural heritage system, and the yellow designation is the neighborhood area designation. And this you will see through in the future slides that we get to. The development aligns with the partial extension of Reed Drive and the development of that neighborhood area, and then the protection of the balance of the green area as a natural heritage system.
Oh, excuse me, the slides, I'm sorry to interrupt. The slides are not moving along. Is that at your end or is that at our end? No,
Which slide are you looking at, Mr. Chairman?
We are still looking at the original public meeting slide.
They're not, the public meeting slides are not moving?
No, that looks like slide 1 still. So.
Well, you know what? I'm going to just stop sharing and I'm going to try it again. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I'm going to just switch to the second slide. Can you see the second slide or not?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Ray.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm gonna do this really quick just to bring it back up to date. So Veterans Drive is right here. McKay Road is on the south. The overall development property is in red. That area is 52 hectares in total. The area of the north, which might have heard me speaking about, that's the area that's subject to the zoning bylaw amendment application, and that's about 19 hectares. The area to the south is the area that's subject to an existing draft plan of subdivision application that's approved. And in fact, a good portion of that southern area is already registered, meaning there's services and lots created and houses being constructed. And it's really this area here approximately, where there's some minor revisions to the lotting fabric and road layout in this area, as well as extending the subdivision into the developable area only on this northern piece. I already spoke to the PPS growth plan and Lake Simcoe protection plan, so I'll move on from that. So this is the slide I was on, Mr. Chairman, that I was viewing, now that hopefully you've caught up and can see that. So I'm going to speak again about the northern piece, which is subject to the zoning bylaw amendment application. So the green area is the natural heritage system, and the yellow area is the neighborhood area. And we're proposing development within the neighborhood area, and the limits of the natural heritage system have been reviewed by RJ Burnside as their natural heritage team, and that's been submitted as part of a natural heritage evaluation as being reviewed by the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority and the City of Barrie. And then these lands here are subject to the rezoning and the draft plan red line revision of the draft plan. Then the southern lands are already draft plan approved, and that's where there's no change or alteration to anything in that area other than some road layouts and the actual subdivision design. These are the studies that are available for review on the city's website, so comments can be provided directly to Tyler Butler. If any member of the public has any questions or comments about any of those items. This slide shows the limits of the northern section. I put a red circle around that, and as you can see, the subdivision proposes to extend Reed Drive, which is a minor collector road, and terminate at a cul-de-sac at the limits of the natural heritage system. Then there would be lots proposed. There are lots proposed on the east side of the proposed Reed Drive extension, and they would back onto a stormwater management pond. And that pond, including the limits of the pond, you can see that there's a topographical drop and slope here because there's a linkage and valley land system in the middle here. So the entire development is outside of the limits of that hazard system and outside the limits of the natural heritage, and it's proposed in that shape. And then there's minor alterations to the subdivision road layout and lotting just in this area here and here. I won't go through much on this, but ultimately there will be an increase in 20 units overall from what was draft approved in the red line revised draft approved in 2021, and projecting forward if committee and council ultimately approves the rezoning and staff approve the draft plan of subdivision revisions, then we would be at 751 overall, knowing that some of those are already under construction and finally approved. This slide illustrates the built form that you can see the types of single detached houses that are conceptually proposed on the north half of the slide, and then the townhouse development. This is the conceptual rendering of what they would look like on the for the townhouses. You can see a variety of materials used, some variation in roof lines and different glazing techniques and different projections of the building themselves. And we're getting near the end now. This is the zoning slide. So this is a rather unique in that we have two different zoning bylaws, that apply to these lands. The south lands are already zoned as part of an approved subdivision. There's no change proposed to the zoning. The lands that we're talking about generally are zoned R5. The lands to the north, right here, which were formerly owned by the county, they're zoned by a 2004 zoning bylaw from Innisfil still, and those lands are zoned EP and agricultural. And ultimately the proposal is to rezone those as per this slide, which is the final slide, Mr. Chairman and members committee, is to show that the road, the lots, and the storm pond would be zoned R5, as is typical practice in other sites. And then all of the environmental protection and hazard lands would be zoned environmental protection, including all the way west to the westerly property boundary and north to this limits of what the county owns and over to the east to Veterans Drive. And Mr. Chairman, members committee, that completes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions, and I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much. I will now call upon Tyler Butler, planner from the Development Services Department, to provide an update on the status of the application. Good evening.
There we go. Good evening, Chair Nixon and members of the Affordability Committee. In addition to the presentation by the applicants team from from Jones Consulting, a memorandum was also provided to the committee to describe the application. I'm going to give a quick update regarding the status of the applications and the primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff at this time. As noted, the applications are to amend the northern portion of the subject lands from agriculture and environmental protection zones that apply to the subject lands in the Innisfil zoning bylaw that we administer to neighborhood residential R5 and environmental protection in accordance with the city's current in existence comprehensive zoning bylaw. And this is going to allow for the development of the stormwater management area, minor lot fabric adjustments in the existing southern portion of the subdivision, and then 20 additional single detached homes that will be located on that extension of Reed Drive. As noted, the total number of homes within the subdivision will increase from 731 to 751 units. And all comments received during the technical review process, as well as comments provided at the public meeting here tonight, will be included and addressed in the planning staff report, which we have targeted for September 2024 to general committee for consideration. However, that timing will depend on the additional natural heritage area work being reviewed by the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and those comments may result in slight changes to the proposed plans. And of course, the submission material and key dates associated with the applications are available for viewing online on the city's proposed developments page under Ward 7, or of course, you can contact me directly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't believe we have anyone else virtually. Is there anyone in the chamber tonight that has any comments? Yes, please come on down. State your first, last name, and your address for the record. Thank you.
One of the points I'd like to bring up is, I guess we're really looking for clarification on water flow to make sure that it doesn't flow to the west. I know I understand that it's supposed to all go to the east. It's one of our concerns. We are to the west of the development. Number two that I would like to bring up, we're really not sure how this will work as subdivisions move forward. we own approximately 50 acres. There's a lot of EP. But here's how I've sort of put it down. Fencing, or how are you going to distinguish private boundary from public using private land like ours? We are dealing with approximately 50 acres, not just a small parcel. Signs don't work as they've been ripped down in the past, and the problem will only get worse as changes come to this area. As the land not built on, could it become public parkland? We don't know that, and that's a question we're asking. And how is it going to affect our land as we hold it for the future? We would have really liked to have seen on a third point, even a farther study for Lake Simcoe, Nottawasaga, City of Barrie. We're not against development. That's not what we're standing here to say, that we're not for the development. But we are looking to maybe look at changes and just working together to try and make things move forward, and maybe something will work better in the whole situation. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in attendance that would like to speak? Seeing none, Ward 7, Councillor Harvey, do you have any questions of clarification?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Nixon. Through you to the applicant, Mr. Duhamel, just to answer a couple of Mr. White's questions that just arose, and I knew they were going to arise ahead of time because him and I have had several discussions, not only about this application, but just the growth of the annex lands in general. So his first concern is in regards to water flows. Now, I can see by this application, you're solely adding an additional row of townhouses that will go to the north. But when you look at this overall subdivision, is there any concerns that any of the water will go westerly towards his property? Or are you confident with all the studies that have been done to date that you will be able to retain the water within your own designated property and the water pond that's already been allocated?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor Harvey. I'm very confident that the water will be confined to drain towards the storm ponds. The city has a very complicated and well thought through stormwater management regime that starts from the province and at the ministry and works its way down from guidelines into Barrie standards, and they're well known and followed. There were sub-watershed impact studies that were prepared for all of Salem and all of Hewitt's as well that looked at the overall drainage in the area. And this property actually has a split drainage. Part of the property drains to the southwest. That's a storm pond that's already constructed as part of the registered first phase of this site. And then this northern piece will flow into that storm pond, which is east of the proposed Reed Drive extension to the limits of the EP. So, the good thing is you don't have to take my word for it, Councillor Harvey, or members of committee as a whole or council, because there's detailed servicing reports and whatnot that have been submitted as part of this application that are being reviewed by not just City of Barrie staff, but also the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority. And they'll confirm that we're not allowed under the Drainage Act and others to just send water onto other people's properties anyway, but notwithstanding that we can't do it, that's not what's proposed in this application. And it's not what would be approved by staff in any event as part of a subdivision approval process.
Great, thank you. And just one other question, again, following up on what Mr. White had spoken about. So even now, without having any subdivision near him, quite regularly, he does say that he gets trespassers onto the property, wandering through the woods and end up inadvertently onto his property. Now, with the subdivision being immediately adjacent to his property, I suspect that's probably going to increase incrementally. Are there any plans through the subdivision plan at this point to place any type of a barrier, like a chain link fence or anything, to separate not necessarily the property lines, but at least where the homes end, so that way people don't go on these wild goose walks through a wooded area and inadvertently end on end up on the White's property. And where I'm kind of drawing this from is if you look over at Thrushwood Drive, for instance, in Ward 7, obviously it's going to change now that there's another proposal to the immediate east, but for the last 10 or 12 years, the subdivision has had like a 6-foot chain link fence bordering this open field. Is there any plans that something similar to that would be erected to avoid and discourage people from wandering through the woods?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Committee Member Harvey, Councillor Harvey. That's a very good point. What I think we need to try to avoid is creating a fence in the middle of an EP area and block wildlife movement. This is actually designed as an east-west natural heritage corridor. So we don't want to create an artificial boundary between the movement of wildlife going east-west. And it's interesting that you say that the landowner has people trespassing on the back of his property. I'm not surprised, because on county lands, the county has their policy in place that allows for public use of county forest lands. There's all kinds of county forests all over that have a variety of planned and kind of informal trail networks, and you can go right off of Veterans Drive right now and walk right into some of those areas. And once people get in there, they don't automatically know where the property boundary is. But certainly from a perspective of delineating that cul-de-sac and the municipal right-of-way, and then delineating the storm pond, I'm sure that we can look at either planting or other methods to be able to delineate the developable area of this site that is being proposed for development from the balance of the site. But I think we need to just keep in mind what the city's official plan objectives were in creating this linkage area and network corridor that goes east-west to begin with.
Thank you. And actually, just out of that, one other question just arose. From what I understand, where the county sold all of the county forest in this area to a developer. Who exactly that is, I don't know. And it may be your client. But is any of this property at the corner of Veterans and Salem on the south side? Is any of that still county forest? Because it was my understanding that it had all been sold as one large parcel.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor Harvey, I think the Mattamy Homes and Mattamy Salem Limited have purchased the area that I showed in the slides that extend to the north limits of the EP as well, and down towards their existing site. The north piece that's designated employment up to Salem Road and over to Veterans Drive, that was not purchased by Mattamy. The county may have very well sold it to somebody else. The last I heard, it was the county, but it could have easily been sold to somebody else. At this point, I simply don't have that information, sir. But this application has nothing to do with the employment lands that are north of that EP that go up to the intersection of Salem and Veterans Drive.
Great, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. We will move past open. Before I do that, if I should mention, if anyone has any further written comments, you could submit them to Tyler Butler in the Development Services Department at tyler.butler@barrie.ca. We will move past open delegations, presentations, standing items, committee updates, and referred items to reports of advisory committees. There is one advisory committee report to be received and one recommendation, which is 6.1, the report of the Heritage Barrie Committee dated June 25th, 2024. Can I have a member of committee put the report on the floor to be received?
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Are there any questions from members of committee? Members of council in attendance? Seeing none. The Heritage Barrie Committee report dated June 25th, 2024 contains one recommendation for the committee to consider. I will now move to the recommendations not held during the consent agenda. This is 6.2. Recruitment of a heritage planner. That Staff in the Development Services Department submitted intake form for the 2025 budget for the recruitment of a heritage planner. We will now vote. All in favor? Opposed? Does not carry, is lost. Moving past reports of officers and items for discussion, I will now adjourn the Affordability Committee at 8:02 p.m.
That was the update from the Affordability Committee meeting. Keep tuning in for other news. Thank you.